and welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show. The show where we talk about all the crazy stupid stuff that people do in marketing and how you cannot do crazy stupid stuff, but instead can do smart, awesome, meaningful stuff with your time, with your efforts, with your energy, and with your budget. And in all of those things, all of those things are important, but specifically today, we're going to talk about the energy component of that, because out in the wide world of marketing, there's a lot of things that you can learn about email funnels and Facebook ads, or I guess we're calling them meta ads now. I can't get into that. It's still Facebook to me. It will always be Facebook to me. Just like X is always Twitter. There's lots of tactical things that we can learn. We can learn how to record an episode on StreamYard. We can learn how to post something, an article on LinkedIn. Lots of tactical things we can learn, but very rarely do we roll that up to the energy in which things are being done. And I have one of my very good energy peeps joining us for this conversation today, which, yes, this is a phrase I coined earlier this year, energy peeps. We can talk about exactly what that means as part of the episode. But the point here being, like, we're talking about energy here today, folks. So regardless of whether or not we have self-awareness of our energy, we either have energy or we don't have energy. Most of us have experienced this when we are having these moments of like abundant energy, and when we have moments of like, I need coffee to do anything. And I think, I don't drink coffee, but you get the point. I have my own energy. The point being that we have an understanding. Sometimes we have energy, sometimes we don't have energy. Very rarely do we filter the activities we're doing based on the energy that we have. So let's just look at it from a very simple perspective of like a marketing effort, such as creating a social media post. I don't generally say, oh no, I'm not feeling the energy today, so I'm not going to post, or not going to post right now. I have it in my calendar that I'm going to write a social media post at 10 o'clock on Tuesdays. And so I'm going to write a social media post at 10 o'clock on Tuesdays, regardless of what energy I am in. Today, we're going to break down why that might be contributing to crazy, stupid marketing instead of the other awesome marketing that we talked about. But before we dive into that, couple of things. If you are new to the show, welcome to the show. We're super happy to have you. If you are not new to the show, welcome to the show. We are super happy to have you. This is a place for all of us to get into the conversation about the energy of marketing. And so while it might look like a conversation for Tracy and Jodi, this is actually a conversation for all of us. So if you're watching on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're watching, there's a nifty little chat comment area. And if you would like to get into the conversation, if you have a question, if you have a perspective, if you have an insight, if you have industry knowledge, we would love to hear that as part of the conversation. So please go ahead and pop that into the chat. We would love to hear your voice. It makes the conversation more robust for all of us. So please do that. And before we dive into the meatiness of this conversation, we should probably know a little bit more about Jodi. So Jodi, can you give everyone who doesn't know you a little brief intro and why energy seems to be the place where you have ended up?
I don't know if I'm fully on the plan on the plan that universe has in store for me. However,
are any of us?
Right. However, I can tell you that I moved or shifted from a future-focused industry, being a wedding planner, and really felt that my life was passing me by at breakneck speed, because I was always planning for the next event, and troubleshooting and risk management and all that stuff. And so I found myself now in this world of presence, being in the moment. And it has taken me years, honestly, years, to really be okay in the moment, because and so I think that is what universe's ultimate plan is like, Jodi, be here, be here now. And so now I found myself as an energy coach and an emotional freedom techniques practitioner, which is really honoring what is coming up for us now in this moment so that we can move forward with more intention, more clarity, more energy, and ultimately more fulfillment. So very brief intro, but a little, so my own sense of humor, bringing it into the mix.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I'm all about authenticity, right? So I'm big on people like embracing their way to do stuff. And I mean, okay, so we both have event planning backgrounds, which is something we have in common. And as you mentioned, it is very procedural. It is very tactical. There's lots of risk mitigation that goes into that. There's a lot of other things in the world of marketing which are similar to that. You got trade show planning, which is pretty much event planning. You have content calendar creation. You have a lot of these different things that end up being very proceduralized, kind of by nature, but also specifically because I think it's been easy for people to create templates for that, right? So here's a template for how you can run a successful event, and then I can just kind of follow the template anytime I do one. I'm sure both of you and I happen to know that we created our own successful template, which is what made it successful. But let's just look at kind of this overarching societal narrative of the value of procedure, the value of process, the value of systems, and how that to some degree conflicts with the natural energy and being present and ways of being.
Okay, well, the first word that comes to mind is that there is a certainty that a procedure gives you. If I do this, this is the reward. If I do this, this is the result. This is the outcome. So in that sense, there is security in knowing if I follow these steps and I check things off my list, I will get the outcome that I am hoping for. And if not, then I tweak. The thing is, what I'm starting to learn is it also limits us, because there is only so much creativity that can happen in a container. And so it's how can we create while having procedures, but also bringing in that flow, that flexibility, that personality that may not necessarily follow a certain way of doing things to get where we need to go. And I think, but you have to know yourself for that. And I think that's the challenge, is that when you look at energy is expression, it is movement. And it is, and I don't know about you, but to me it would be a lot easier if I could have my eyes closed and dance and pretend that no one's watching me, right? Because then you could just move however you wish to move without the fear of someone looking at you going, oh, really? That's the move, right? But you have to be comfortable with who you are. You have to know who you are. You have to have a sense of what works for you that may not necessarily work for someone else, but that doesn't make either one right or wrong. Right. And so I think there is so much beauty in procedure, and there's also so much beauty in flexibility and flow and no structure. And it's finding that balance to be able to express it in a way that is unique to you, to your business, to your mission, to your message.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think I don't know why this made me think of like my knee surgery. I am not a surgeon, far from it as possible, because me and blood are not friends. But when I went in I tore my ACL and I went in to have reconstructive surgery, and you can agree to let the surgeon fix other stuff, right? So like they go in there and like the meniscus is torn and things like that, which are common with the industry. Yeah, now we're going deep into it, folks. Yeah. I had torn meniscus as well. But like the point is, I've given him permission to do things that that might manifest. Maybe not. And so there's a procedure to do each of those things. But there is also then like what needs to be done, right? Like, does this need to be, does this not need to be fixed? And I think there's an interesting, because our brains do like to have information boxed and we do like that certainty, we like to be able to say, I know for sure I'm going to have to fix meniscus today. And we actually forget that I know how to fix that if I come across that. I know how to deal with, oh man, at my sister's wedding, there were like 7 bridesmaids and her, and breakfast didn't get delivered. And I was like, this is going to be a disaster. You do not need 7 plus a bride, 8 hungry young women.
Yeah, who's also experiencing a completely different way of showing up. Yeah, you want to make sure that there's some
feed them, right?
Yeah.
Make sure they are fed. But like there, I don't want to deal with that, right? Like worst case scenario, I'm gonna run to McDonald's and get a bunch of chicken McNuggets. Right? Like we have these abilities as individuals to, the phrase that's coming up for me is fill the gap, right? Like this is a gap that now has been identified. I actually know probably multiple ways to fill that gap, but I get so committed to the procedure that I get distracted from my belief that I know how to fill that gap. Even if, would I say my ideal way to fill a gap is with McDonald's? For me personally, no. Like that's not my favorite thing to eat. I'd rather fill that gap with sushi. But at breakfast, maybe I wouldn't rather fill that gap with sushi. But we have, like, even when you play with seemingly silly things like that, you really know what you would do. We just don't have that like continual narrative of like, I know what I would do. I need my template. And if I have a template, then I know what to do.
Yeah, but okay, so this is what's interesting because it's bringing up, I had a timeline for when I was a wedding planner, right? But I always said it was a guideline. Right. It was going to be a guideline for the expectations of how the day is going to flow. However, it wasn't set in stone because I needed to read the room to be able to assess what a bride may need at a certain time, or knowing that, oh, vendor's running late, and to be able to work. So there's that flexibility. So I think there is beauty again in having a guideline, having an outline, because what it does is that if something should go completely off the rails, right, and you can't find the answer or you can't commit to whatever, you can go back to and bring it back to center, bring it back to, oh, here's the agenda and this is what we're working with. But I think what it is too, it's not negating what you bring to the table. It's not negating your personality, your tone of voice, your sense of humor, right? It really is, it's bringing in the wholeness of an individual. So that procedure, that guideline, like whatever you want to call it, is necessary so that you know these are these steps in terms of moving forward. And some steps may happen really quickly. Some steps you might end up doing a bit of a 2-step, forward, back. But I think there's definitely something to be said in this is the way things are typically done, but also knowing that as an individual, I can question those things, not so much as, just because you've done it all this time, but it's more of, is this true for me? Is this something that is going to help elevate or support or be able to have my message shared in a way that is going to resonate with who I am, and in that way will actually resonate and attract the people that I wish to work with or have conversations with and stuff. So it's like there's a lot that goes into play, but I know that and I can bring in my experience as a wedding planner, which was very procedure. Right. There was timeline. There were a lot of people who needed to know what was going on. So you wanted to be able to share that. I also called it a Mack truck theory. This isn't fun to say, but if I ever got hit by a Mack truck, someone could pick up my timeline. I'd hope that they'd miss me just a little bit, say a little prayer. But it was the idea that they could pick up my timeline and they could still run the event because there was an outline of this happens next, and these are the people that are involved, and this happens next, and stuff. And it's interesting that I am completely on the other end of the spectrum now in energy coaching and emotional freedom techniques, because it's really about connecting with who I am, or the person I'm working with, who they are, what's true in the moment for them, what is honest for them, even though, like, you can have this incredible perspective. Yes, I see it as a bigger perspective. There's a silver lining, but right now, this is how I'm feeling. Right now, this is a tough situation that I'm going through, and I'm going to honor that. So it's bringing in all of these beautiful pieces and not making any of those pieces right or wrong, but just an incredible part of the puzzle, a part of the equation for the outcome and desire that we're working towards.
Yeah, and that is a great reason why I wanted to even have this conversation in the marketing arena, because humans are having those types of experiences. Sometimes we're having joy and excitement. Sometimes we're having a really tough, bad time. And very commonly, we will say, okay, I leave my emotions at the door, which, like, we can keep pretending that that's a thing that we do. But really what we're doing is we're stuffing our emotions down far enough to be distracted by work. But when it comes to marketing in particular, and again, I'm not an accountant, so I don't know how this reflects in like numbers and things like that. But in marketing, it's marketers' job to create connection with potential customers or current customers if you are nurturing. That's a connection thing. A human is only capable of connecting to the degree that their energy allows that connection to be available. And so if I'm coming into work and I'm saying, I'm trying to create excitement, connection with people, but I am feeling really disconnected from my team or my family or what have you, then we can pretend that we're doing activities that will create connection. But that energy component is really the foundational factor that allows that connection to manifest further down the line. And if we're not bringing that into the creationary part of the conversation, then it's not going to just appear at the end of a digital ad or a post or an article or a conversation. Is the more dangerous one. So, I mean, I just love to hear your experience in like the work that you do now in, I think, let's look at this from the bright side. I feel like I'm painting a very dark picture.
No.
What does it look like, or how does it feel? What does it feel like when I'm like out in the world creating connection opportunities from a confident, value-driven energy versus an I have to do this energy?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I was also thinking about, it's an opportunity to engage in conversation, right? And regardless of the emotions that we're feeling. And sometimes the low emotions is a beautiful opportunity to engage in the realness and the yuckness of being human.
That's true.
Right? But the have to, or the shoulds, or the like, that to me is I'm getting like a dampening. There is because there's a forcing, is that I don't have a choice. And when there's no choice, there is a limit to the access we have to creativity. There is a limit to the access that we have in terms of engagement or expression, because we are being forced to share something that we may not be ready to share at that particular moment. But I don't know if and I should speak for myself, I don't know if I would know, and I'm learning this, how to express myself in a way that would say that I'm not ready, because society, I feel pushed by society. Either I should have this figured out already, I should know, should be further ahead, or I need this course, this training in order to step outside of the box. But I think it's also recognizing that the timing may be off for us. And is it okay for myself to sit in a pause and saying, okay, if I am feeling I have to, then maybe that's a message that it is not time for me to be to express in the way that would be authentic to me at this time. Right? Because if we just look at and nature being a reflection for us, there are seasons, and each season has a theme, right? You have spring, summer, fall, winter. Well, why wouldn't we expect that as humans we would reflect similar seasons of growth, of retreat, of connection, of trainings and learning, and so I think it's really about starting to get curious about the languaging of what it is that we're going through at different times in our life, trying not to compare it with others, but recognizing that every single I have to, I should is coming from an energy of lack, of effort, of push, and really stepping into the feeling of, and sometimes it's honestly, it doesn't feel like sometimes, I have to, there is a necessity, and recognizing that, but honoring the feeling that's coming up of why I feel like I have to. So I'm hoping I answered the question. I feel like,
but well, it's very philosophical.
It is. It's a big question. It really is a big question.
Well, and okay, I have to feed my kid, right? There are things where you have to, but I think there's also like the energy behind the words even, right? So like me saying like I have to feed my kid is to me an acceptance of responsibility. I think I chose this. I have to feed my kid. And I don't necessarily I don't associate bad energy, bad mojo with that. I have to eat. He has to eat. Let's figure it out.
Okay, but what I'm curious, I'm going to interrupt you for a second there, okay?
Let's do it.
What I'm curious to know, it says, I have to feed my child, okay? But if there is a feeling of not wanting to feed your child, that's the clue for me. Right? Why am I feeling this is a stress to feed my child? Because I've got these projects, or I'm tired. And so all of a sudden it's recognizing that there might be some golden nuggets or breadcrumbs of information that, yes, there is a responsibility that I have to ensure that my child is fed up until 16 years old, right? That's my responsibility. Right?
He's 7 now. If he's really hungry, he can go get a bagel.
Absolutely. But the thing is it's recognizing that if there is something that holding you back from doing something that originally brought you joy, that is an incredible piece of information. Either we need to sit and have this conversation with this child going, I know you have to eat. I am really tired. So, you know what? We're going to take this as an opportunity. I'm going to show you how to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or mac and cheese or whatever, so that we can have this team effort, because there are times where, and so there's always opportunities and stuff, but it's interesting that the I have to, it depends on the energetic vibe to that I have to. Right. I have
it's like to. Whether or not it's aligned with your I want to.
Right.
Right.
Is there resentment? Is there resentment attached to it, or bitterness, or regret? Like those are that's beautiful information. That doesn't feel beautiful. Okay. Can I be really honest? It does not feel beautiful. And when you are in the yuck, you're just like, this just freaking sucks right now. But when you are able, after you've honored the yuckiness of it, to be able to step back and, well, isn't that beautiful? Why do I feel resentful or bitter about, I don't want to say that about feeding my kid, but you get the gist.
Well, and this is why I use this example.
Feed my kids. Please.
Well, Darren is in the chat here. If you're doing it from a have to energy, it's disingenuous and will be perceived by those that also operate within that energy, which is really interesting as well. And I think that disingenuousness, it comes from the misalignment, right? Because now I'm saying what I have to do isn't in alignment with what I would do or what I want to do or those types of things. And you can, yeah, again, it's kind of I want to feed my kid too, right? So like, this is where I don't have a problem because I don't have a misalignment. But when we think about a lot of things we do from a work perspective, and I'm gonna bring this back to marketing because the number of posts that I've seen on LinkedIn that complain about how people have to do marketing.
Yeah.
I'm just like, you guys, is this a helpful mindset to come at it from? Because like, okay, you could look at it from the I have to do marketing, but the reason you have a problem with that is because your authentic experience of that is I don't want to do that. And very commonly that's tied to a very specific thing. I don't want to post on social media every day. I don't want to be on video. But like it could be 100 different things. But the point, so then you associate that activity with marketing, which is actually a gigantic, broad thing. And we get this, like, I had a conversation with a friend of mine last week because he canceled a meeting that we were supposed to have because he had to go to a meeting that his boss scheduled instead. And I'm like, the problem here is your have to isn't what you want to do. But in a work scenario, we've created this hierarchy that says, if you don't do what I say, then you get fired. So now you have to do what you don't want to do. And I don't care what you want to do or what previous commitment you've had on your calendar for a month before this. Like, I don't care. And all of this is energy. So now you're going into this meeting with this have to energy. I don't really want to be there, but I have to. This is taking away from something I really wanted to do, but now I have to be here instead. Is that our best creation energy?
Yeah.
Because I feel like you said, now we're back in black.
Yeah, because I don't have to it's a symptom to something, whether it's a belief, whether it's a rule that we feel tied to, or an expectation, obligation that we feel that we don't have a choice in, right? It becomes a symptom. And when you look at that, it's like, okay, well, what are the contributing factors to that symptom, right?
Yeah.
But I think too, just to bring it to marketing, like you said, I think it also depends on how people perceive, what people perceive marketing to be. Like if you were to say marketing is an opportunity to engage in conversation, to me, I'm like, okay, bring it, because I love having conversations. And it is an opportunity to have a platform to share my beliefs and to be able to express myself in a way that will either inspire others to agree or not agree, or to add, if you will, to the conversation. But all of a sudden, marketing completely is a very different animal, if you will. But I think that, and again, I'm speaking like, I've never really had a problem, I don't believe, that I'm aware of, with marketing and advertising, because I've always believed that it is a service that someone may resonate with. And I am never out to convince you. Like, I'm one of those people, I'm like, hey, check other people out. Absolutely. Because the last thing you want is a wedding planner or a coach or a marketing strategist that you don't click with. You want to ensure there is a personality click. There are reasons why there are so many different people on this planet that have different likes and dislikes and stuff, right? And you are looking for your tribe in your marketing. And it is a way to be able to put yourself out there in conversation. And so that, to me, that would probably be a question I would ask on, okay, what do you think marketing is?
It is one of the first thing I get my clients to define for me. What is marketing to you? And most of it is out to lunch. But the interesting thing, exactly as you said, right? There's this ability to reframe it into something that resonates with you, Jodi, and whether that resonates with everybody is a different thing. But the point is that what resonates with you and how can you turn it into something that resonates with you? And the thing that's really interesting for me is like I worked in lots of companies with lots of like junior marketers, marketing coordinators and things of that nature. And they come and they're very good at doing. um
That was me too.
like yeah. It's so much to the point where like they don't really know why they're doing what they're doing. They're just doing things to do things, and they do them well. They do them on time. They do the amount of things they're supposed to do. But to speak to Darren's comment here, question comment, is it I don't want to do marketing, or is it more that they are not seeing the value of the marketing effort? If their marketing is working, that's creating value. We're going to come back to marketing, quote unquote, working in a minute here. But this concept of like, I do to do because that's my job. And for entry level jobs, that's very common, right? We say like, once you're experienced, you get to do the thinking. When you're junior, you get to do the doing. You do stuff, I'll do the thinking, you do the things that I think are good. And then we get into the habit of doing, but not thinking. And then if we're not thinking, I found, actually pros and cons with thinking. Sometimes we're thinking so much we can't possibly get connected to our feelings, right? We're too up in our head, can't feel anything in our body. But I think from this like processing volume, which again is specifically common in marketing, like how many posts, how many blogs, how many this, how many that, how many likes, how many whatevers. I get so busy processing the volume that I don't have time. I don't have time to think about my energy. If I took like 10 minutes to think about my energy, I wouldn't get all my stuff done. And therefore, I don't have time to do that. And then I think this turns into like, I don't have time. So I have to just do. And what I'm doing, I can tell it's not really doing anything, but I can't stop doing that. I've been instructed to do those things. So I don't know. I did like threw out a whole bunch of mindsets there, but anything that's
and it's interesting because you said this at the beginning, and this is probably one of my beliefs, before I entered energy psychology was the what I knew about energy was I either had it or I didn't.
Right.
And what I've come to learn now is that there is so much more than having or not having energy. It's an invisible world, so it's even difficult to really put it into words because there is a weight that we carry, whether it's a mental weight or whether it's emotional weight or whether it's recognizing that there are so many factors or so many things in a day that can hook into us and hold us down, that burden us literally, that we don't recognize that is affecting our energy, whether it is in the way we find the words to express ourselves, whether it's in the way that we engage in a connection with someone who is going through something challenging, whether it's in a way that we tend to loved ones, I believe it's more than having the energy to do something or not. Like the energetics of our being is affected on whether there is flow happening. And and like I said, I'm still learning about what exactly, like I remember asking this one gentleman and I were in a conversation and he says, do you know what everyone is craving in this world? And both of us answered at the same time. And he said, more energy. And I said, more joy, inner joy. And you realize if you look at the words energy and inner joy are very similar. And so to me, I believe that in order for us to access energy, it is tapping into this inner joy that that fills us in a way that outside things don't fill us. But it's so challenging to be able to fulfilled with something on the inside out when we are outwardly focused on checking things off the list, on the achievement, on the next success, the next relationship, like whatever it is. But I believe that that is what we are searching for. We're searching for fulfillment of our inner joy, which will give us the energy to do what we were meant to do on this planet. And for some of us, we figured it out really early on, and then there's people like me, it took a little bit longer.
And I mean, this is an episode for another day, but you're exactly where you're supposed to be today. You're not supposed to be ahead. You're not supposed to be behind.
I am supposed to be on LinkedIn Live with Tracy.
With Tracy and Jodi. But I think this is okay. This concept of inner joy, I think, is important too, because when I look at like a job description or the hiring process that people are going through and the amount of tapped into inner joy people are going through that process, I would think it's not great, especially in the like current hiring environment. There's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of people applying for a single role, right? So then all of a sudden we get caught up in this. I'm trying to I need to prove myself to people. And like, I think that takes you out of inner joy, because somehow we've convinced ourselves that our inner joy, expressing our inner joy isn't what will impress other people, isn't what will create connection, isn't what will do those things. And so we try to be quote unquote professional. We try to be very strategic. We don't allow that like inner energy to come out, which then also it manifests on the other side of the relationship. It manifests and says like, oh, I'm not bringing confidence into this conversation. So now the hiring manager doesn't experience you as confidence, and you don't get the job because you didn't get experience as confidence because you were convinced that being yourself was the thing you shouldn't do. So and there's a lot of stuff out there too that it tells you that, right? There's Forbes articles that tell you how you should be when you're going to an interview, right? And we get caught up again in these shoulds and these have tos, and it pulls us away from that inner joy. So when we're talking about energy, I mean, today we're specifically talking about energy and marketing, but the foundation of that energy is the same whether you're manifesting it in marketing or you're manifesting it in something else. Is that like, how do we close that gap again between who we should be, because that's what the world wants us to be, back to that inner joy?
Now think about a conversation that you and I could have if neither of one of us was engaged with the topic. Okay. It would be a very different conversation, right?
Yes.
Because we would be talking about something that doesn't light us up. It doesn't bring us joy, doesn't, right? And we also look at happiness and joy as a nice to have. Yeah,
Right.
It'd be nice to have, but I got bills to pay. I got a kid
Right.
to feed. I've got, right? But the thing is that think about how much a message changes when there is, like, when you can nerd out. I can nerd out on emotions, nervous system, like brain, the way the brain works. Like all of a sudden that becomes contagious because I'm nerding out. You're like, whoa, Jodi's really geeking out on this. Like, that's exciting. And all of a sudden you end up creating this ripple effect of like enthusiasm, right? And it builds and it builds and it builds. And it's all of a sudden this, wow, that was fantastic. I don't even know what we talked about, but God, it felt good. Right? That's coming from the inside of really allowing us to be able to share something that is meaningful to us.
Mm-hmm.
When when I know when I am focused, I got to talk about for myself. When I am focused on the outside of, okay, how can I fit in? How can I measure up? How can I prove my worth so that you'll want to be my friend? So that, right? Because that's a personal agenda now, right? That is like, I need to behave a certain way, act a certain way, say the right thing so that Tracy is going to like me.
Right.
Well, now all it is, it's a fishing expedition. I'm going to throw something out there. I'm hoping you're going to pick it up, and then, but all of a sudden now it's so outwardly focused that there's no magnetism, there's no energetic exchange of, wow, there is no you see me and I see you in the same way that we were able to see each other in the other one, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, look, Jodi's got a really quirky sense of humor. I kind of like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a mask that we wear to when we are looking to prove ourselves, or feeling enoughness, or how making sure that other people see the enoughness. And that's a very different conversation, that when you are grounded with who you are, to be able to express yourself and be okay that there are going to be some people who like you, some people are going to resonate, some people aren't going to resonate, but you have to like yourself first. And I would say a lot of people probably think they do. I thought I did. Totally thought I did. And then when the noise of doing all of the things started to settle, and I actually heard the voice, oh, she wasn't so nice. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's hard to be who I believe I am, or who I'm wanting to be, if you will, when the voice in my head is saying, I don't think so. You got to keep fishing. Right? Very different conversation. But if I am grounded in, I am feeling X, which it can be very vulnerable, can be exposing myself, right? In a certain light, and people are going to be like, really? Jodi doesn't have it together? Wow, can't believe she did that. Right?
Secret. None of us have it together.
Right? But the thing is that it's getting to a point where you're comfortable with saying that and just saying, okay, this is who I am, and not riding all of I will accept myself if Tracy accepts me. I will accept myself if the client hires me.
Choose me,
right?
yeah.
Right. And so, like I said, I think the conversation is very different depending on where you approach it from. If you approach it from the inside out, it is a beautifully engaging, in-depth, electrifying, exciting conversation. That's an opportunity for marketing, because other people are going, I want to work with you because son of a whatever you're taking, I want some of that.
I like what Darren is saying here. I had it all together, but forgot where I put it. I think this is also an important point too, and like how things evolve and change over time, right? Because that's very similar with marketing, right? Like you might have something to kind of go back to what Darren had mentioned earlier about if marketing is working, is creating value for you. And sometimes that's intangible value, right? We might see it in numbers of things we can count, post views, engagements, likes, going viral, these types of things. But there's also that more intangible, like I understand, I see how this is connecting the dots. And while I can't necessarily like measure that, then like you get it, you feel like that effort is worth your time. But like coming back to all of these things, like a lot of times this might sound like we're talking about an individual person having an individual experience, and it's true. Now roll that up to a marketing team. So now we have this entire marketing team with junior people on it because we're trying to save money. So we're either using Chat GPT to try and do stuff, or we're using junior people. And they're coming in and they're thinking that their value as a team member is in the amount of social media posts that they post. And so they don't have this underlying foundation of like, oh, I am a valuable team member, even if only 3 people see this post today. That impacts the energy in which they bring additional efforts to the table. And if we're now saying our brand experience depends on these young, inexperienced people bringing their energy to the market in a way that matches our brand, but we're not having a conversation with them, we're not coaching them in this arena to enable them to find their ways that they can tap into that energy, then all of a sudden we have this, I like to call it doing energy, right? Where we forget about being. Doesn't matter who we're being, doesn't matter if we're happy, sad, joyous, enthused, whatever, sad, angry, panicked, frustrated. We're just going to do the stuff. Just do the stuff. And if I do the stuff, that's it, right? And I go to work and I get paid for 8 hours a day. So I'm going to go to work for 8 hours. I'm going to do the stuff. And then I'm going to worry about my own personal energy, my own at work. Except now that's the energy that's getting passed on to our potential clients out into the universe. And let's talk about energetic resonance here, because like one of the reasons that Jodi and I are energy peeps is because our energy resonates with each other. We express our energy, the energy resonates, so we can be energy peeps. One of the things Darren mentioned earlier is that people are doing it from a have to energy, resonate with people who have to energy, right? So it's not necessarily bad. It still creates some energy resonance, but it's about, is that the energy resonance that is in alignment with you? Because if you're, I'm going to use this example because I think it's really common, especially for entrepreneurs. You get taught like a marketing system. You believe that's the system you have to implement. That's the system that works. So now I have to implement that. Now I have to energy. I'm going to market with have to energy, except I'm not, maybe you're more like me and Jodi, where we're like, well, you don't have to buy coaching, right? Like you don't really, you need to choose coaching, because if you don't choose it in a meaningful way, it's not going to work for you. You don't, you choose, you don't have to. And so if now I'm going to market with have to energy, but I want my clients to have choice energy. Well, now I'm not in energy resonance in terms of like what I'm trying to create. So now to tie that back into Darren, you have lots of good comments about Darren's comment about if marketing is working, it's creating value. Now the marketing, it won't work. It won't work because the alignment isn't there. If you're in have to energy, you want to speak to have to energy, might be fine. But if you're have to energy and you're speaking to choose to energy, then the likelihood of that working is very low. And also the likelihood that the tactic that you've chosen, social media posts, podcast, whatever, it doesn't matter, because the energy resonance that comes through the tactic is the same. It's not in alignment. So like, talk to me about this concept of the like energy resonance between two parties.
Okay, so
or
the
dissonance, maybe.
No, yeah, the word that's coming to mind is honesty. I think it's having an honest conversation with yourself and then with your marketing team in this case, right? And because even though the tactics that you're using, it might be too much. It might be too much of a goal. Do you know what I mean? And so it's like dipping your toe in. So if you honestly feel like I can't market every single day, then what feels doable? Right. And it's honoring that, right? Even though it does not feel doable to do 7 posts a week, that's just too much. Honor that. Because that's how you slowly get into resonance instead of swimming upstream and trying to fit into this model of I have to post 7 times a week, or I have to post 21 times a week, or I have to do this, I have to do that. Find what will help to twist, turn your kayak so that it starts going downstream. And it could just be one thing, right? It could literally be just one thing. What is it that I feel is doable now so that I will work the energy, right? With the energy I have. Because guarantee you, if you start working with your energy, the next day, being truthful, being honest with yourself and working with your energy now creates a little bit more room so that your energy can settle. And you're like, oh, wow, isn't that interesting? Because I was in integrity with myself yesterday, I actually have a little bit more energy because I chose self-loyalty, right? I chose sincerity. So when you choose that, all of a sudden then you're like, okay, so what feels true for me today? What, being honest with myself. Oh, guess what? All of a sudden now I got to do another post, or I did this the next day. So I think it takes baby steps. It is being in resonance doesn't mean that you either have it or you don't. It's recognizing, what do I have access to now? Working with that with wholeheartedness, going, this is what I have to work with. And that's a beautiful thing. And then knowing that the more you stay intentional with your energy, the more it will expand and serve you, because now there is this connection you've created with it. Instead of saying, screw off, you're going to do what I tell you to do, whether you'll like it or not, energy. You're like, okay, energy, what do we have to work with today?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you slowly start to create this communication where it becomes this beautiful exchange of, I am listening to what I have the energy for today, and the next day, and the next day. And all of a sudden, you've now created this incredible system that respects where you are, what it is that you are choosing to do. And I have to, all of a sudden, can shift to, I choose to have to, or I am open to seeing this differently, or I'm honoring the fact that it feels like I have to, and I'm curious to know what it is, are the contributing factors that make me feel, or I'm curious to know why I feel this way. Do you know what I mean? Like, all of a sudden what you're doing is you're engaging in conversation with yourself to find out, hey, what's going on here? What is holding us back? Or why are we in at this moment? Let's, like, how many people actually stop and saying, hey, what's going on? I never did. No.
Well, and again, like, I feel like there's not a lot of space created for it. And so unless we create our own space for it, which is really what, like, people who get coached are really working to do, right? Is create space for themselves to have experiences, to get curious about, like, what's going on for me, because the outside world isn't necessarily going to do that. And I mean, I always like to think, and I always did this as a leader too, like, what if we could create that in the workplace? And what if it didn't have to take, I'm not saying spend 4 hours a day in self-discovery, right? I'm saying create the space for self-discovery to exist when and if it needs to, right? In every single to-do item, it doesn't, right? You might be, I mean, I always use this as an example because I love to write my LinkedIn articles. I love, it's fun for me. It's a way for me to develop ideas. It's not about, like, how many people see it. It's an opportunity for me to, like, puzzle thoughts together. And since I'm puzzling thoughts together, I might as well show it to the world, because why not? If we're going to work together, you might as well understand how my brain is thinking about stuff. And this is how I show you. But even, like, to play into what Darren is saying here, I get to being the best place to place your energy. I'm not a huge fan of I get to. Personally, I choose to, because, like, get still feels like it's something that's given to me. When I feel like I choose to, like, I pick that. I'm gonna go choose that. Let's go choose things. But you mentioned that, like, how that creates the space, right? Like, it creates the space. And often we think that space has to take up a lot of space, but it doesn't have to take up a lot of space. It's just like that ongoing permission that allows us to look at that. Just because I looked at the clock and I was like, wow, we went It's really long already. I want to get to a couple of the other really awesome comments because the LinkedIn user really resonated with the I will accept myself if let's stop with I will accept myself.
No,
Um,
but the thing is, I think she could this LinkedIn user can correct me if I'm wrong, but I will accept myself if Tracy likes me. I will accept myself if
right,
the client hires me. Like
right.
that's all of a sudden you realize like that's back asswards.
Oh, yeah. I love it. And Peter was asking a question: isn't the issue with that the thinkers don't explain their thinking, so the doers don't see the why? I mean, again, I resonate with that, Peter. I'm always trying, even when I'm coaching my baseball girls, right? I'm like, do you know why I'm asking you to do that, or why I'm asking you to try that? And they'll be like, yes, and I'm like, really? Because it's pretty random. And they're like, actually, no.
Because it
Yeah,
engages in the why, right? To be able to
right.
share a why with someone, now all of a sudden they're going to buy into the investment. Because they're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I was just doing it because you told me to do it." But now you're telling like, why? Like kids are asking why? And parents are like, "Oh my God." But that's just such a beautiful point of really getting curious about tell me what the motivation is here because then I'll know how much of myself I will invest in this. And
Right.
if I resonate with that, then energetically we can kick some ass because it's going to be incredible.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, okay. So I was gonna go do another thing, but just because we're running out of time, and that's a really good place to stop, is that like, wouldn't that be a beautiful energy for your marketing team to be working from? Right? Let's go kick some ass together. Like, I mean, that's what I want my marketing team to be like. And I show up to do my marketing activities and I'm excited and I'm curious about, like, okay, I have a good reason why I want to try this, right? I have a hypothesis. I'm testing it. I'm going to learn some stuff. I'm going to learn some stuff that works. I'm going to learn some stuff that doesn't. I'm going to continue to iterate on that until we figure out what works for us, what is in like full resonance with this team. Oh, then that person leaves. I get a new person. Now I got a different team resonance. Right now I kind of have to figure it out again. But I also have that skill of being iterative and innovative and the practice of being disciplined in something that's about harnessing, identifying energy and harnessing energy into something that we can see. When we talk about marketing working, right? What does that mean? Does that mean it's generating leads? Does it mean that it's getting PR attention? Does it mean that like what you're serving your clients better? It can mean a lot of things. So what does that mean? And what does it feel like when you know that it is coming to fruition? And what we could just spend a teeny bit of our time in asking those questions instead of just looking at how many social media posts we could post this month. Oh, by the way, I'm LinkedIn user is Akim. I don't know why Akim always comes in as LinkedIn user. This conversation was so great, and we are out of time. But Jodi, if there are people who are interested in that more personal side of finding their resonance and their energy work, where is the best place for people to find you?
Well, why don't we just send them to LinkedIn and they
Come
can
on
see
over
me
to LinkedIn.
Inflow Energy Coaching, Jodi Gagne. I would love to continue conversations. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, so good. And Jodi happens to be tagged in the post associated with this live on LinkedIn. So if you're watching on LinkedIn or if you're watching somewhere else, you can go over to LinkedIn and find the post and click on her name and get connected that way. Energy is it, Jodi mentioned it a couple of times, like your journey and you're still learning, and this is an ongoing journey, this energy conversation. We have new experiences, they impact our energy, we have new information, we can continually stay curious. This isn't really a final destination type of thing. This is an opportunity for us to learn and continue to create resonance. So just like all of our lovely conversations here on the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, please do not let this be the last time you have a conversation about the energy of marketing, but the first of many times. Connect with me, connect with Jodi, connect with the other people in the chat. These are the people who are interested in jamming on the energy of marketing. And specifically, if you feel like your marketing energy is not in flow, then it is going to be, yeah, see what I did there? I'm pretty good at that. Like this conversation. The conversation is a really amazing place to start getting some of that stuff in flow. Get the ideas out of your body into the universe. That is a flow creation activity. Conversations are great for that, and we have at least 2 people on here who would be super happy to have a conversation with you about it. So Jodi, my energy peep, is always a pleasure. Thank you to Darren and Akam and Peter for joining us in the chat. And for all of you out there who did not join us in the chat, thank you for joining us as well. If you have thoughts, questions, anything coming out of this, reach out to me, reach out to Jodi, put them in the chat and tag us and we can come back to it. We'd be super happy to continue the conversation with each and every one of you. And until next time, peeps, permission to do you.